Hello everyone, and welcome to my first grade classroom. My name is Miss Stoner, and today we're going to do a comparing numbers math lesson. So, in our lesson, we're going to use Gavin the Gator, Greater Than and Less Than by Kathleen L. Stone, to help us understand this first grade standard. In this first grade standard, it is asking the students to compare two two-digit numbers based on meanings of the tens and ones digits, recording the results of comparisons with the symbols greater than, equal to, and less than. And the learning targets are 4 I can statements. I can compare the values of two-digit numbers. I can use the symbols greater than, equal to, and less than correctly. I can show the difference between tens and ones digits. And I can record the results in a math equation. So the prior knowledge that the students should have in this lesson are going to consist of academic and both cultural knowledge, but the kindergarten standard that they should know before this lesson should be understanding the relationship between numbers and quantities and connect counting to cardinality. In the academic setting, students should have been exposed to comparing numbers through hands-on experiences in kindergarten. Students should have experience with the numbers in the tens and ones place in kindergarten, and students should also have experience writing equations in kindergarten using at least the equal sign. As far as the cultural knowledge that they should already have is they should have reviewed place value, they should know about place value, and they should be able to explain how bigger versus smaller numbers can be compared. They should be able to give examples of a bigger number versus a smaller number. And I know that I'll have to train students on how to use the symbols greater than, equal to, and less than in an equation, because most of them will only already know how to use the equal sign and not the greater than or less than signs. So here are a couple of the teaching strategies I'm going to use. The first teaching strategy is going to be a pre-assessment for gauging students' current level of exposure to comparing numbers, and I'll show you that right now. Come on. This is the pre-assessment that my students will be using so that I can gauge their prior knowledge and exposure to comparing and ordering numbers. So all they'll need to do is look at the first number, look at the second number, and decide what sign goes in the middle. And I'll have those signs displayed up on the board. I don't have it on the worksheet, but they would have to look up on the board and be able to choose from the equal sign, the greater than sign, or the less than sign. And I will also explain to them, this is not for a grade. It's just for me to see what you already know. Don't look at your partner's paper. I just want to see what you already know. So they would go in and compare all of these numbers to each other, and when they're done, they'll hand them in so I can see what their prior knowledge is about comparing numbers. After all students complete the pre-assessment, the next thing that I would do is read aloud the book that I showed you earlier, which would be Gavin the Gator, Greater Than and Less Than by Kathleen L. Stone.
See, here's the number 59, and here's the number 23. Early in the morning, before the sun begins to shine, Gavin finds two numbers, 23 and 59. Oh, look, he's eating a number that's greater. With a twinkle in his eye and a smile of glee, Gavin gobbles 59 because 59 is greater.
So as you can see in this story that I'd be reading to my students, Gavin the Gator only chooses numbers that are bigger because he wants a bigger portion. He wants a bigger meal, right? If you're hungry, you're going to want something that's bigger, not smaller. So that kind of helps set the idea of greater than and less than for my students before we do our lesson. After we finish our interactive read aloud of Gavin the Gator, I would also do a whole group instruction that includes an anchor chart, and the students will have to fill in their parts of the anchor chart while I talk about what needs to go in the blanks. After that, I would do small group instruction with modified worksheet and manipulatives for those who are struggling or new learners of comparing numbers. That way later on I can see who needs extra help and who doesn't. I would start other children in the independent practice group with unmodified worksheet with no manipulatives for my own review later. And then, after both groups are done, they will also transition to the Technology Center with immediate feedback for students that gives me an idea of what they're still struggling with and what they're doing well with. So when I introduce my lesson, I would tell my students, all right, today we're going to read a story about Gavin the Gator. He's a picky eater like some of you guys might be, and he doesn't eat gator food. He only eats numbers, and big numbers. That's his favorite, is big numbers, not small numbers. So as Gavin the Gator eats, we will decide to keep track of what numbers he eats and what numbers he doesn't eat. And whenever I read the story to my students, they are going to join me on the carpet for the lesson along with their math journal and their pencil if they decide they see anything that they might want to write down, anything that they notice during the story. I'll also pause during the story to talk about some things that might need to be discussed, like, oh, look at how Gavin the Gator chose to eat the bigger number versus a smaller number. Why don't you think he wanted the smaller number? Something like that. For the pre-assessment, I also have a pre-assessment key, and I will go ahead and show you that now. So this is the teacher key for the pre-assessment compare and order worksheet, and this is just giving me the answers that I needed to know to see whether or not they're struggling, or they know it, or they're on grade level expectation. And now that I think about it, while I'm presenting this lesson to you guys, I actually used the numbers that were from the book, but I should have chosen some numbers that were equal to each other as well, because most kids by kindergarten probably, or by first grade, if they're just entering first grade, they probably will have not used these symbols in math, so I should have included some numbers that were equal to each other. So instead of 19 and 91, I should have had 19 and 19. That way, they might see something that they kind of recognize or could use a symbol that they recognize, because by first grade, all kindergarten kids will have used an equal sign in a math equation. So that's something that I should have gone back and added, but I didn't think about it until just now. So after I do the pre-assessment and then the read aloud, we are going to complete this anchor chart. So I will be doing the lesson, and as I teach, they're going to need to fill in the anchor chart. And I will show you guys what that's looked like. So this is my comparing numbers anchor chart. At the top is the teacher copy. Everything's already filled in. And at the bottom is the student copy. They would fill in greater than, equal to, less than, and they would fill in what symbols need to go here that I would also have on my anchor chart. So based on the performance that my students gave in the pre-assessment, I will then group them into 3 different groups. There will be a low group, a middle group, and high group. Students in the lowest group will start with a small group assignment that will be led by me, and they will be working on this worksheet that I modified for them that will have smaller numbers, and I will be doing it with them as the teacher. I will be aiding them in completing this worksheet. They will not have to do it by themselves. I will also provide them with 10 sticks and 1 cubes so that they can use manipulatives to not only see what the number looks like, but also what it looks like as a whole. And they will need pencils and erasers to complete the assignment with me. Alright, so this is the comparing scores worksheet that I modified. I went back and I changed some of the numbers from the original document because my kids that are struggling are not going to need huge numbers to compare. They need to kind of start with the basics, and as I got closer to the bottom, I kind of added maybe some bigger numbers, but again, I will be completing this with them. So I try to just kind of stick with smaller numbers for them to start out with. So for my independent work group, my kids that would kind of be middle of the line, or my high group, this is what they will be doing. They will also be completing the same worksheet, except it won't be modified. I won't allow them to use manipulatives because I want to see what they know. They are in the medium group or the high group for a reason. I want to see what they can do without using manipulatives. I also want to see if they can compare both sets of numbers that are in the tens place, not just ones and tens. And I will show you what that worksheet looks like. This is the comparing scores worksheet that is independent. As you can see, the other version of this was modified. It was some smaller numbers, but my kids that are middle of the road or my high group, I want to see what they can do with these numbers, and I don't want to let them use manipulatives because I want to see what they can do without a little bit of extra help. After all 3 of my groups are done, either the small group with my lesson and doing the worksheet with them, the modified worksheet, or my middle group and my high group that are done with their independent worksheet, I will collect them and I will grade them to see kind of where they are, to see if they learned anything, if they improved, or if they didn't improve, just to kind of see where they are. So after they complete their worksheet, they are going to do the comparing numbers game on ABC. This is an elementary-friendly website that offers interactive comparing number games that provide students with real-time feedback. They also have all kinds of other games. They do language arts. They do plenty of math. This is a really great website that I love to use in the classroom. Once students complete the game, they're going to raise their hand to let me know that they are done so I can see their score and record it on my score sheet. You see how it gives immediate feedback? It tells you 9 is not less than 9, 9 is not greater than 9, so obviously the only thing I have left to choose would be the equal sign. And then it tells you at the end you got 5 correct in a row, so it will not let you even complete the game until you get 5 correct in a row. After all groups are done with their small group assignments, I will call them back to the rug to kind of just close the lesson and talk a little bit more about what we did today. And I would say, all right, kids, so today we used our manipulatives, we used technology, and we used our worksheets to help us compare numbers to see if our numbers are greater than, less than, or equal to. And then after that, I will let my students turn and teach their neighbor about what strategies they used to compare numbers today. This is a great way to see if your students actually gathered anything from the lesson. The confident student will turn to their classmate and say, hey, this is what I learned today, and this is what I did, and this is the strategy I used. And a student that maybe didn't learn anything or didn't really grasp the concept, they might not even say anything. They might say, something totally different than what the first student said or whatever. This is a great way to kind of gauge their understanding and their learning from the lesson. And then I will also reintroduce the comparing numbers anchor chart and let them know that they're going to add this anchor chart to their strategy toolbox during the next math lesson. So this is an anchor chart that they're going to use in the future to help them complete future assignments. So I use two different types of assessments. I use summative assessments and formative assessments. The summative assessments that I used were the pre-assessment, the turn and teach, and the ABC Yaw game. And the formative assessments that I used were the comparing scores assignment and then the modified comparing scores assignment that I did. Because like I said, my kids that were in the low group, I modified the numbers for them. I tried to give them smaller numbers and kind of just, let them figure it out to see how they were going to do and what kind of information I can gain from that. Even though I'd be completing it with them, I still gave them smaller numbers because I knew they were in a low group. So some of my kids are going to need further modifications or accommodations rather than just the smaller number worksheet that I gave my lowest group. And I gave two different examples. I have Andrew and I have Molly. So it says Andrew's still working on learning how to compare numbers. And I would let him directly complete his worksheet with me or a para in the room and not just with my guidance. So in the small group, my screen recorder cut me off, but I was just saying that my student Andrew will be able to complete this small group worksheet directly with me or directly with a para, because in the small group, I will not be holding hands. I will not be telling them exactly what to write. I will just be reteaching the lesson and kind of guiding them on how to complete the worksheet. But with Andrew, for somebody that is really, really struggling, I would directly complete it with them. I would stop and I would pull out all the stops and do all the pauses for this student because they really, really need it. I would also give extra examples to complete on a whiteboard after we finish the worksheet, and then I would also send home extra practice in his take-home folder with a note on it that says, hey, I need you to complete this with Mom and Dad. We kind of struggled during class today, so let's make sure we complete this. Another example of a student I have that really has mastered this assignment would be Molly. She was really doing well at completing the unmodified independent assignment without manipulatives and the technology game, so she will have access to extra practice with comparing numbers in the ones, tens, and hundreds place during skill building time at school, and extra practice to be sent home to complete with Mom or Dad. So not only would I be giving her extra practice to reinforce what she already knows, but I will also be including practice that has one extra place of value. So the numbers that we looked at today would only be ones and tens numbers, but I would also be sending home numbers that are also living in the hundreds place to kind of challenge her a little bit because she's doing really well. So and that is the end of my lesson. Thank you again for tuning in. I kind of just wanted to give the best lesson I could about comparing numbers if you are in first grade. So I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching. Bye.